Hey y'all, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we're bringing you another episode of I'm Moving to North Carolina, Now What? Keep in mind, we have a whole treasure trove of videos that you can either listen or watch. They're located on YouTube and Spotify everywhere. So today's episode is how to effectively work with your builder. Keep in mind, the builder is the seller in this case, and typically they have their own representative, a listing agent, if you will, or an on-site agent that's representing them throughout the contract. So with all of these people involved, your builder team, like your on-site super, the listing agent, buyer's agent, how do you track communication? And when things go awry, what rights do you have? So first of all, let me clarify that all builders are trying to do the best that they can when they build a home. And they also hire people that they feel are going to do the best job because their name matters, their reputation matters. So at the end of the day, I think we all want to make sure that we're building the best product for any future homeowner. But sometimes there are things that maybe don't align, whether it was a verbal conversation or something from the contract didn't get implemented. So what do you do in those scenarios? So the first one is anytime you have a verbal communication with somebody. So we're talking about just like this, right? So I'm talking to you, something is decided, and I'm intending for that to kind of be implemented moving forward. Always send the per our conversation email. I know it sounds so silly and it sounds very rigid, but I cannot tell you how many times those types of emails have actually come to play where we have had to kind of pull the receipts and show on this date at this time, we spoke to so and so and they said this was to be done. Remember, those communications, while they're sent and sometimes not responded to, it is good to be able to give them the opportunity to kind of combat what you're saying. And if they don't combat it, that kind of shows that they're acknowledging it. So always make sure if you're talking with the builder, the on-site super, listing agent, you recap. The other thing that does, not only is it holding people accountable, but it gives them the opportunity to clarify. Sometimes there are things that can be interpreted multiple ways, right? And so we also want to make sure that we're not misinterpreting that the general information that's being provided doesn't necessarily apply to the home that we're buying. So sometimes if there's multiple phases of a community, the builder might be offering incentives on phase one. But let's say you're interested in a lot on phase two. Those incentives that they're verbally talking to you about may not apply to the lot that you're actually picking. So it's really important just to clarify. We always want to make sure that everybody's expectations can be met with reality. The second thing is looking at any CO changes. So these are change order changes. So there's documentation that sometimes the builder's written themselves. Sometimes it's on a standard form that we have per NCREC. So keep in mind, you always want to have those kind of jotted out, right? You want to have contract documents amended, updated, red line plans. You need to have those details written in because if it's not in writing, often it can be missed and it doesn't exist. And sometimes if things are not in writing and we get past that phase of the build, it is very difficult or very costly to go back and implement those changes. So make sure if you're saying that you want, let's say, like a car charger, so an EV charger in the garage, and you want it on a particular wall in a particular space, make sure on the red line plans it says actual dimensions of each line of where that's going to line up on the wall. If it just says on that wall, it could be anywhere along the wall. And I know that these details sound so minute, but when it's your home and you're paying for these things, it's really important that everything is implemented to the best of everyone's ability. Another big thing with CO changes is you want to track the money. I have seen when you have an all cash deal and you're having to make these changes and they're being paid out of pocket. If there's not proper documentation, it can be really difficult to track the money and what's due on closing day. You don't ever want to get double charged. So keep the receipts. Make sure that you are documenting every single penny and what it is being applied to and when it is expected to be done by, and then who is going to inspect that it was done correctly. So there's a lot of steps in place when you have any changes to the initial build in the contract. The other thing is, and this is number 3, understanding the power of the person you're talking to. It's great for you to have good relationships with the on-site agent or even the on-site super, but at the end of the day, the builder, or if it's a big box builder, whoever kind of like their overarching decision-making body is, make sure you're talking to them. Sometimes you'll hear the word no, or I can't do anything about it because the person you're speaking to doesn't actually have the authority to make any of those decisions. So it's always good to kind of start with the lower end of the hierarchy. But just remember, if there is a discrepancy, you want to make sure that the answer you're being given is actually from the person who is the decision maker. And then number 4 is a huge one. Sometimes you pop over to a work site and you have a conversation with somebody that's from the builder's team and something gets decided. Well, number 1, you want to loop in your agent. Make sure they're aware of any of those conversations and decisions that are being made. So if you're building a custom home and you have a design center appointment and you decide that you're going to spend a little extra money and not stay with those level 1 kind of costs, you want to go to the level 2 and some things are chosen or picked, or things are not chosen or picked at that time and need to be done at a later date. All of this needs to be relayed to your agent. Your agent is there to advocate for you, to explain things, to follow up, to be your boots on the ground, especially if you're relocating here. So keep them in the loop, and also be very mindful that sometimes builder teams have turnover. So you don't ever want to have an agreed upon thing with Jimmy, and then Jimmy moves on to a different project and he's not a part of this anymore. And all of a sudden, Bobby, who is now the secondary, comes on board and he's like, well, Jimmy doesn't work with us. So I'm not really sure how I can be held accountable for a decision that was made and there's no documentation. So always bring things to your agent's attention, because sometimes they'll give you a better method to ensure that it is implemented with efficacy. So when in doubt, always refer to your contract documents. This is kind of the last pro tip that I can give you. Your contract is always going to be the decision maker. It is your mediator between the two sides. Speaking of mediation, if there is a disagreement between you and your builder, be really careful and pay attention to what your contract says about any type of disagreement that happens between the two parties. In some cases, and I see this more along the lines with my big box builders who have kind of standardized contracts that go nationally, there is a clause in there or a little paragraph that says if an agreement cannot be met, the contract can be terminated by the builder. So always know your rights before you get into these conversations, and make sure that you are documenting. It cannot hurt you. It can only help you. I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we'll catch you guys on one of our future episodes.